Today we're going to look at the economic impact of corruption. It comes in the wake of ex-President Mubarak in Egypt allegedly stashing away millions and billions abroad. Now, joining me in the studio today is Professor Joe Nellis. Now, Joe, what's the big deal, some people say? Corruption is what oils the wheels. And anyway, it really isn't a big issue.
Well, corruption may well oil the wheels of commerce, but there are huge costs involved in allowing corruption to take place. And there are many aspects of this. I mean, for example, bribing of public officials. Well, that may lead to decisions that are not the right ones for society. Tax evasion itself, the whole bureaucracy, it can lead to mistrust and even a loss of foreign investment, a loss of trade. And it widens the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Those who can afford to pay the bribes and to work in the corrupt environment, they're looking after themselves. But what about the rest of society? There are huge costs for all countries concerned resulting from corruption. And let me just emphasize, corruption is not just in developing and poor economies, it's everywhere. Tax evasion is a form of corruption.
So let's examine this a bit more, because you say it's universal, it's everywhere. Is it worse in some countries than others?
Yes, it's everywhere to various degrees, or varying degrees. And it's difficult to measure it. I should have said that at the outset. But we have got a report that comes out every year, Transparency International. They produce a corruption perception index. And this is based on perceptions. How corrupt is a country? How many kickbacks do they think are being given? On that basis, they rank most countries in the world, at least those they can record and find evidence for. And at the bottom of the list, well, there are two categories. There are those that have fallen the most over the last 12 months, and those that tend to be at the bottom in any case. And the ones at the bottom tend to be Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq. Perhaps not too surprising, Myanmar is another one. They're at the bottom of the list historically. Over the last 12 months, the ones that have fallen the most, not necessarily to the bottom of course, tend to be the ones that have gone through the financial crisis and have perhaps had the most severe consequences. So Greece, Italy, Czech Republic, Hungary, even the USA has fallen down the list, although it is far from the bottom, of course.
So let's look a bit more then at the damage this is causing. And aside from any moral stance, and I know that a lot of people would take a moral stance on this, what we're looking at here is the economic consequences. Yeah. Let's unpack this a bit more. Can you say, categorically that a country will be a lot worse off as a result of corruption?
No, we can't be definitive in that sense. There are no studies that look at the macroeconomy as a whole. No study estimates the overall impact on any economy. What we do have are a number of individual sector reports for individual countries. So, for example, it may be that in a certain country, 20% of the rice goes astray. Rice provided perhaps by the UN or some charitable organization, or 50% of trucks are overloaded and still on the roads in certain countries because they're paying a bribe. So we have no measure of the macro cost. But let me go back to what I said earlier. From the viewpoint of foreign investment, you may say, well, I regard corruption and bribery as a cost of doing business. At the same time, it will discourage in many cases, honest companies from investing in those countries. In that sense, it isn't just a short-term cost in terms of jobs and investment, but it's about long-term growth prospects. It's about prosperity in the long run. I think that's the real cost here. The trust, the confidence in that country as a place to do business. And so as we see, the growth of globalization, the growth of trade relationships and foreign investment, certain countries are definitely losing out in that context. Countries like Myanmar, for example, and of course Afghanistan and Iraq are in a different situation, but Somalia, these countries are losing out long-term as well as short-term.
Now, any rational view would say, right, what we need to do is to stamp this out, but we all know that in reality that's extremely difficult, isn't it? Are there countries that you can see that have demonstrably improved the way that they've handled corruption and the benefits that's caused?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there are some countries that are are sort of flagships for tackling corruption. Countries like Chile, for example, and Bhutan as well, Gambia, even Haiti and Jamaica. There are a number of South American and Central American countries that have pushed ahead and are trying hard to fight corruption in its many forms. And the way they're doing that, really, this isn't rocket science. It's encouraging their citizens just to ask the simple questions. Where is my receipt? Why should I pay this bribe? Reporting officials. And it's not just public sector, it's also private sector. But of course, we tend to think of corruption in the public sector primarily. So there are a number of countries absolutely leading the way, some in the Middle East as well, Kuwait and Qatar. These are the countries that are reporting the most improvements in their corruption perception index.
So if we leave aside any kind of moral issues, and there are plenty of people that would jump on that bandwagon, from a hard-headed economics perspective, you'd say you really need to tackle this. There are ways of doing it. You need to get on and do it.
No question about this. Again, if I look at the rank list based on the corruption index, the richest countries like Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Singapore, they tend to be the top of the list. What that means is they're the most trusted countries based on perception of corruption. Those at the bottom of the list tend to be the poorest countries. Now, that is not a coincidence. There is a direct correlation and causation, I would argue, between the most corrupt economies and the poorest economies. And that itself is a cause, is a reason why we should all fight the evil of corruption.
Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you.